There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from quiet rooms or empty spaces. It comes from being alive, breathing, hurting, and still being treated like you don't exist. It's the silence of being unseen while you pour everything you are into people who barely notice. You've been there, haven't you? You gave your time, your heart, your kindness. You forgave the unforgivable, held your tongue, and smiled through the pain, hoping one day someone would finally see the fire behind your eyes. But they didn't. They mistook your silence for weakness, your calm for surrender, your patience for permission to walk all over you. You were the kind one, the consistent one, the one who stayed when others left. And still, you were overlooked, forgotten in the noise of liars and fakers who got the applause while you faded into the background. That silence, it wasn't weakness. It was the moment before the storm, the quietest, strongest form of resistance. It was you realizing that your voice wasn't being heard, so you chose to speak through absence, through stillness, through walking away without a word. And that's when everything changed. Asterisk. There comes a moment when silence isn't just what's left after the noise fades. It becomes a decision, a deliberate, powerful, unshakable decision. It's not about giving up. It's about waking up. It's the second you realize that your voice, your energy, your presence, they don't matter to the people who should have valued them the most. And instead of fighting to be heard, you stop speaking. Not out of weakness, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You were the kind of person who gave second chances like they were free samples. You forgave the same mistakes, over and over, thinking, maybe one day they'd change, maybe one day they'd see you. But they never did. They took your kindness and called it weakness. They mistook your loyalty for a lack of options. They thought you'd always be there, just like they always were, silent, waiting, hoping for something that would never come. But then something shifted. Maybe it was a moment. Maybe it was 1,000 small moments stacked on top of each other, until the weight became too much. You looked in the mirror and saw the exhaustion in your eyes, the way your smile didn't reach them anymore. You realized you were giving pieces of yourself to people who didn't even know how to hold them. And suddenly, silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. That's the breaking point. The moment you stop explaining yourself, stop justifying your feelings, stop chasing people who never even bothered to stay. You don't walk away angry. You walk away calm. And that's what scares them the most. Because when someone who used to fight for every connection just stops, it means they've already let go. You stopped answering. You stopped reacting. You stopped trying to make them understand. And in that silence, you found something they never expected: peace. Not the kind that comes from closure, not the kind that needs apologies or explanations, but the kind that comes from finally realizing you don't need them to feel whole. And that's when everything changed. Asterisk, there's a moment, not loud, not dramatic, when everything inside you shifts. It doesn't come with a scream or a breakdown. It comes with stillness. With a decision so quiet, so final, it changes the course of your entire life. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop begging to be seen. And in that silence, you begin to change. You used to wear your heart on your sleeve. You gave people your truth, your pain, your joy, all of it, and they treated it like background noise. They let your words fall to the floor while they chased louder voices, flashier smiles, easier souls. You kept showing up, even when they didn't. You kept loving, even when they stopped. You kept believing in something real, even when they gave you every reason not to. But then something inside you broke, not in a way that made you collapse, but in a way that made you rise. You realized that silence wasn't the absence of strength. It was the presence of wisdom. It was the moment you understood that not everyone deserves your energy. That some people only know how to take, and they'll never learn how to give. And so, you stopped offering pieces of yourself to people who didn't even know how to hold them. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's not a single event. It's 1,000 little moments stacking up, the times they ignored your voice, the times they dismissed your pain, the times they acted like your presence was guaranteed. And then, one day, you just stop. You stop answering. You stop trying to make them understand. You stop giving them the chance to hurt you again. And that's when the real change begins. Your silence becomes your shield. Not cold, not cruel, just protected. You start choosing peace over explanation. You start walking away from chaos instead of chasing it. You learn to read people without saying a word. You become dangerous not because you're angry, but because you're unreadable. You don't give them the reaction they want. You don't play their games. You don't let their noise pull you back into the mess. You become someone new, not fake, not hardened, just wiser. You don't need validation anymore. You don't need someone to apologize to feel whole. You realize that your worth isn't tied to someone else's opinion of you. That the only voice that truly matters is your own. And when you finally listen to it, really listen, you understand that silence isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something stronger. You stop needing closure because you've already found peace. You stop needing apologies because you've already forgiven yourself. You stop needing people to change because you've already changed for yourself. And that's the power of silence. It doesn't just protect you, it rebuilds you. It strips away everything that wasn't real and leaves behind the raw, unshakable truth of who you are. You're not the same person you were before. That version of you, the one who begged to be heard, who cried in silence, who stayed too long, that version is gone, and in their place stands someone stronger. Someone who doesn't need words to be heard. Someone who doesn't need someone else's presence to feel whole. Someone who walks in silence not because they've given up, but because they've grown up. You're not broken, you're just done being soft for the wrong people. Done giving your light to those who only wanted to use it. Done loving without limits. Silence taught you control. It taught you strength. It taught you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. And now you carry that silence like armor. Not to shut the world out, but to filter who gets in. Asterisk, there's a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when the people who hurt you finally realize what your silence means. It doesn't come with a confrontation or a dramatic message. It just hits them. One day, they'll look around and feel the weight of your absence. Not just your physical absence, but the silence where your voice used to be. The silence where your kindness, your patience, your love once lived. They thought your silence was weakness. That not hearing from you meant they'd won. That walking away without a word meant you were done, finished, over. But what they didn't realize, what they still don't realize, is that your silence isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something stronger. And now, they're the ones left wondering what went wrong. Because silence doesn't just protect you, it changes the people who caused it. It haunts them in ways they never expected. At first, they might not even notice. They'll go on with their lives, distracted, busy, maybe even relieved. But then, in the quietest moments, late at night, early in the morning, when the world is still and there's no noise to hide behind, they'll feel it. That strange, uncomfortable emptiness, the absence of your presence, the silence where your laughter used to be. They'll start questioning things, not out loud, never in a way that matters, but inside, where it hurts the most. Did they push you too far? Did they miss something? Did they ever really see you? Did they ever truly understand what you were giving them? And why didn't you fight to stay? But the truth is, you did fight. You fought harder than they'll ever know. You gave second chances, like they were free. You forgave the unforgivable. You stayed when anyone else would have walked away. You smiled through the pain, held your tongue, tried to make them understand. You gave them everything, and still, they treated your presence like a given. And now that you're gone, now that your silence has settled in, they're starting to feel the weight of what they lost. Not just you, but the version of themselves they could have had if they'd treated you differently. The person they could have become if they'd learned from your kindness, your strength, your love. Some of them will try to hide it. They'll pretend they don't care. They'll tell themselves you changed, that you're cold now, that you're being cruel. They'll rewrite the story in their heads, painting you as the villain so they don't have to face the truth, that they let someone real slip through their fingers, that they took your silence for weakness, and now they're paying the price. But others, the ones who truly saw you, they'll feel it deeper. They'll carry your silence like a wound they can't heal. They'll replay your words, your actions, every moment you shared, trying to understand how they missed it, how they let you walk away without even realizing what you were leaving behind. Because silence doesn't just speak, it screams. It tells the truth in a way words never could. It shows people what they ignored, what they took for granted, what they destroyed. And the loudest part, it doesn't need to say a word. Your silence is their mirror now, and they hate what they see. They'll start noticing things. How no one laughs the way you did, how no one listens like you did, how no one gives the way you gave. They'll meet new people, build new connections, chase new versions of love, but nothing feels the same. Nothing compares. And that's when the real regret sets in. Because silence doesn't just leave a void, it leaves a standard. And once someone has experienced the kind of love, loyalty, and strength you gave, anything less will always feel like a downgrade. Some of them will try to come back. Of course they will. Regret is a funny little ghost. It always shows up late. They'll send messages, drop hints, try to pull at your heartstrings with old memories and fake apologies. They'll say they've changed, that they finally understand, that they miss you. But by then, you'll already be too far gone. You'll look at their words and realize something. They're not reaching out because they care about you. They're reaching out because they're scared. Scared of the silence. Scared of what it means. Scared of the version of themselves that's staring back at them in the mirror. And you won't respond. Not because you're bitter. Not because you're angry. But because your silence has already done the talking. It's already said everything they needed to hear. Because silence doesn't just break people, it unmasks them. It shows them who they really were when you were still trying to love them. And once that truth is out in the open, there's no hiding from it. So let them wonder. Let them miss you. Let them sit in the silence they created. Because the real punishment isn't revenge, it's indifference. It's watching someone rebuild themselves without you. It's knowing you played a role in their pain, and now you have no access to their healing. That silence is louder than any goodbye you could have ever said. And that's the power of it. Because when someone who used to love deeply stops talking, it means they've already left. Not just in body, but in mind, in heart, in spirit. They've already buried the connection. And no amount of fake tears, no apology, no last-minute effort can resurrect what they killed in you. So let them feel it. Let them carry it. Let them live with the weight of your silence forever. Because that's the price of disrespecting someone who gave everything. That's the cost of letting silence speak for itself. And that's how you know. You're not the one who lost. They are. You didn't just walk away. You didn't just stop answering calls, stop reading messages, stop chasing people who never stayed. You did something harder. You let go. Not with a scream, not with a dramatic exit, not with a final message that explained everything you felt. No, you let go in silence. And that's the hardest kind of goodbye, because silence doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It just fades. And in that fading, you found something you never thought you would, peace. Not the kind that comes from apologies or explanations, not the kind that needs someone else to change, but the kind that comes from realizing you were never the problem, that your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. You gave too much for too long. You loved when you should have walked away. You forgave when you should have set boundaries. You stayed when you should have disappeared. And still, you were overlooked. Still, you were taken for granted. Still, you were treated like an option instead of a priority. And that's when you realized you weren't the one who needed to change. They were, but they never would. So you stopped waiting. You stopped hoping. You stopped explaining why you hurt, why you stayed, why you gave everything and still felt like nothing. And in that silence, something inside you began to heal. You started listening to yourself again. Not just the words you spoke, but the ones you buried deep inside. The ones that told you you were worthy, that you deserved better, that you didn't have to keep proving your worth to people who never saw it. You remembered that silence wasn't just a shield. It was a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw the truth. You were never broken. You were just tired. Tired of giving love to people who only knew how to take it. Tired of showing kindness to people who only knew how to abuse it. Tired of speaking to people who only heard what they wanted to hear. And when you finally realized that your silence was the only way to protect yourself, something shifted. You started rebuilding, quietly, alone, without fanfare, without declarations, without needing anyone's approval. You focused on your peace. You learned how to sit with your pain instead of running from it. You stopped trying to fix yourself for people who never even saw the cracks. And in that stillness, you found strength. You learned that healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with a big moment or a dramatic transformation. It comes with small choices. The choice to stop responding. The choice to stop explaining. The choice to stop chasing people who never chased you back. And each time you made that choice, you grew. You stopped needing validation. You stopped needing someone to apologize to feel whole. You realized that your worth wasn't tied to someone else's opinion of you. That you didn't need someone to change to prove you were enough, because you already were. And that realization, that was the moment you started healing. You started setting boundaries, not harsh ones, not cruel ones, just clear ones. You stopped letting people in just because they showed up. You started asking yourself, do they deserve my energy? Instead of just giving it. And when the answer was no, you walked away. Not with anger, not with bitterness, just with silence. And in that silence, you found something else, clarity. You started seeing people for who they really were, not who you hoped they'd be, not who you wanted them to be, but who they were. And that clarity was painful at first. It hurt to realize that some people never truly saw you, that some people only valued you when it was convenient, that some people only missed you when they realized you weren't coming back. But that pain didn't break you. It refined you. It stripped away everything that wasn't real and left behind the raw, unshakable truth of who you are. And that truth, that you are not someone to be taken for granted, that you are not someone to be ignored, that you are not someone who needs to prove their worth to people who never bothered to look closely enough to see it. You started protecting your peace like it was the last thing you had left, because in a way, it was. You stopped letting people into your space just because they asked. You stopped giving your energy to chaos. You started filtering who got to see the real you. And when people tried to pull you back into the noise, you smiled and walked away. Because you finally understood that silence wasn't just a way to protect yourself. It was a way to rebuild yourself. It was a way to reclaim your power. It was a way to remind yourself that you don't need anyone's approval to be whole. And that's when the real healing began. Not from closure, not from apologies, not from explanations, but from the simple, powerful act of choosing yourself. You stopped needing their presence to feel complete. You stopped needing their love to feel valued. You stopped needing their attention to feel seen. And when you did that, you became untouchable. Because silence doesn't just protect you, it rebuilds you. It filters out the noise. It strips away the lies. It leaves behind only what's real. And when you finally let that silence do its work, you stopped being the person who begged to be understood. You became the person who simply didn't need to explain. And that was the beginning of something stronger. There's a moment, quiet, almost sacred, when you finally understand that silence isn't just protection, it's peace. Not the kind that comes from someone else's apology or a grand gesture of closure. Not the kind that needs to be explained or justified, but the kind that comes from within. The kind that says, I'm done fighting for spaces I was never meant to occupy. You used to think peace came from being heard, from speaking your truth, from explaining your pain, from making people understand why you hurt. But now you know better. Peace doesn't come from being understood. It comes from choosing yourself, from stepping away from the noise, from the people who only wanted your energy when it was convenient, from the conversations that drained you more than they healed you. You stopped chasing validation. You stopped needing someone else's approval to feel whole. You realized that your worth wasn't tied to someone else's opinion of you, that you didn't need their presence to feel complete. And that understanding, that quiet, powerful understanding, changed everything. You don't react anymore, not because you don't care, not because you've hardened, but because you've learned that silence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. You've learned that the people who truly matter don't need you to justify your feelings. They see you, they hear you. Even when you say nothing, you've become unreadable, not cold, not cruel, just protected. You don't give your energy to chaos anymore. You don't waste your time on people who only show up when it's convenient for them. You've learned to filter who gets to see the real you and who only gets to watch from a distance. And that silence is your power. It doesn't beg, it doesn't chase, it doesn't break, it just walks. And the people who once tried to control you, who once tried to mold you into something that suited them, they feel it. They feel the weight of your absence. They feel the silence you left behind, like a void they can't fill. Because silence doesn't just protect you, it unmasks them. It forces them to look at themselves and see the truth they spent so long avoiding. It shows them what they lost, not just you, but the version of themselves they could have had if they'd treated you differently. You don't need revenge. You don't need apologies. You don't need anyone to admit they were wrong, because your silence already said everything they needed to hear. Your silence already told them the truth, and now they have to live with it. They'll try to come back. Of course they will. Regret has a way of showing up late. They'll send messages. They'll drop hints. They'll try to pull at your heartstrings with old memories and fake promises. They'll say they've changed, that they finally understand, that they miss you, but you won't respond. Not because you're bitter, not because you're angry, but because your silence has already done the talking. You don't need their validation anymore. You don't need their presence to feel whole. You don't need their love to know your worth. And that is the most powerful thing of all, because silence isn't just about walking away. It's about walking forward. It's about building something new, something stronger, something that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. You've learned to love yourself in the quiet, to heal without needing anyone's approval, to grow without needing someone to witness it. And in that silence, you've found something they can't take from you, something they can't undo. You've found peace, not the kind that comes from closure, not the kind that needs to be explained, but the kind that comes from knowing you did what was best for you, from knowing you walked away from something that was hurting you, from knowing you finally put yourself first. And that peace is louder than any goodbye you could have ever said, because silence doesn't just speak, it screams. It tells the truth in a way words never could. It shows people what they ignored, what they took for granted, what they destroyed. And the loudest part, it doesn't need to say a word. Your silence is your boundary now. It's the line they can't cross, the wall they can't climb, the language only the wise understand. And for those who don't, let them wonder. Let them live with the version of you in their memories. Because that's all they're worthy of now. Memories, not moments, not second chances. Just flashes of what they once had and will never have again. And you keep building, keep healing, keep loving yourself in silence. Because one day, someone will meet you. Someone who listens. Someone who understands that your quiet isn't weakness. Someone who respects your distance. Someone who sees the war you fought without ever raising your voice. And they'll whisper to you, not because they're weak, but because they know that real souls don't shout. They speak in presence, in consistency, in stillness. That day will come. But until then, you stay silent, stay calm, stay dangerous. Because silence isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something stronger. And now you carry that silence like armor. Not to shut the world out, but to filter who gets in. Asterisk, you never needed a grand goodbye. No dramatic speech. No long message that spelled out everything they did wrong. You didn't need to scream your pain into the void or chase apologies that would never come. Because silence, real silence, says more than any words ever could. It's not about revenge. It's not about hurting them the way they hurt you. It's about protecting yourself. It's about drawing a line and refusing to cross it. No matter how loud they beg for your voice again. Silence isn't punishment. It's peace. And sometimes, peace means walking away without looking back. They thought your silence was weakness. That not responding meant they won. That walking away without a word was proof that you didn't care. But they were wrong. So wrong. Because silence isn't the absence of strength. It's the presence of wisdom. It's the moment you finally understand that not everyone deserves your energy. That some people only know how to take, and they'll never learn how to give. And now they feel it. They feel the weight of your absence. Not just your physical absence, but the silence where your love used to be. The silence where your laughter, your kindness, your presence once lived. They thought they could walk away from you and move on easily. But silence has a way of haunting people, of making them question everything they once believed about themselves. Because silence doesn't just leave a void, it leaves a standard. And once someone has experienced the kind of love, loyalty, and strength you gave, anything less will always feel like a downgrade. They'll meet new people. They'll build new connections. They'll chase new versions of love. But nothing will feel the same. And that's when the real regret sets in. They'll start noticing things. How no one listens the way you did. How no one gives the way you gave. How no one stays the way you stayed. They'll realize that your silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. It was the final lesson they never wanted to learn. You don't owe them an explanation. You don't owe them a final message. You don't owe them your voice just to ease their guilt. Because silence is its own language. And the people who truly matter, the ones who see you, who respect you, who understand you, they'll hear everything you're saying without you ever speaking a word. Let them wonder. Let them miss you. Let them sit in the silence they created, because that silence is louder than any goodbye you could have ever said. And that's how you know you're not the one who lost. They are.